trying to define what consumer law is somewhat difficult. I'd say in a nutshell, the interesting thing about consumer law is that everybody's a consumer. So if there's 300 plus million people in the United States, there's 300 million plus consumers. One way of defining consumer law is that it is a little guy who is somehow being taken advantage of almost exclusively by another larger entity of business. Sometimes it could be individual to individual, but that's pretty unusual. So consumer law, in a nutshell, is when anybody who is acting as a consumer is somehow deceived. But it spreads out beyond just the purchase of things or the purchase of services. It goes to what happens after those purchases. So in the mortgage context, it has to do with what happens when a bank tries to take your home in foreclosure, and maybe that's not justified. It can have to do with what happens when someone tries to collect a debt that they say you owe. And either you don't think you owe it, or you don't owe that amount, or the way they're trying to collect it is heinous. And that could be debt collection practices. It has to do with how your credit is reported because of the purchases you make and the payments you make on those purchases. And so there's laws protecting what happens. It has to do with how you're solicited, both in advertising or whether or not you receive faxes you didn't request, or texts that were unsolicited, or calls that were unapproved to your cell phone, or calls to your home when you're on a no-call list. So consumer law is a big umbrella under which all of us are protected a number of ways. The irony, to some degree, and I think it's sad, is that there's not a lot of consumer lawyers. So one thing that's interesting about Campbell law is that all three of us belong to the National Association of Consumer Advocates. And we take a pledge that we will not represent businesses against consumers. We'll represent consumers who are hurt by businesses. And that we take that very seriously. In the state of Missouri, there might be 10 attorneys like that. 3 of them are at Campbell law. And we know the rest of them and have worked with them. Because unfortunately, it is often hard for people to find representation for the very real problems they're facing. Not every problem is a contract dispute. Not every problem is an injury. Some problems are a business lied to you and you lost money your family couldn't afford to lose. We handle those cases. And we're proud to do it, and we do it with some level of experience and commitment to it. I think one of the reasons we do that is because we believe in them. We've been bitten by the consumer law bug because we figured out that it is rewarding to work on cases where people are fighting back against a business. It feels a little bit like a David and Goliath story sometimes. And I think we all enjoy that and relish it. We all are consumers ourselves. I mean, we all understand what it is to get cheated out of money that you needed to pay next month's bills. And we stand up for those people. So class action in a nutshell, I mean, it's when one person stands up for the rights of another. And the way a class action works, it makes it somewhat different than a case. Traditional cases is that it has an extra step. So you still have to understand the substantive law. You still have to have a wrong. You file that claim. But the first thing you do then is you conduct discovery to show that your plaintiff is like other people, that other people have suffered the same wrong in the same way. And that might be that they were all cheated out of the same benefit, that they were all charged a fee that was illegal, that they were all lied to in a standardized way through a written document, that they all received the same contamination from the same incident, that they were all cheated out of overtime under a company policy. It could be any number of things, but they apply to all the people in a very similar way. So the first thing you do is you present that evidence to a court. And you need to show that court that there's enough people. That's called numerosity. You need to show them that your plaintiff is like the other people. That's called typicality. You need to show them that your plaintiff's willing to stand up for these other people and not sell them out. That's called adequacy. And you need to show that there are some similar problems for everybody, problems that are common, that we can solve once. And the whole idea of a class action is if we solve it once, we can affect hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. And we can use the court one time to resolve all those problems that may have gone unaddressed without a class action, or that would at least be addressed inefficiently. And that's called commonality. And then you also show the court that this is the best way to do it, meaning it's better to do it for everybody than it is to do it one by one. And that's not always the case, but in a class action, when we pursue them, it's because we believe it is. That's called superiority. And so you put those elements in front of the court in a motion, and if the court approves it, the court will do what's called certify a class. And what will happen then is notice is sent to the class members. And those class members are told, you're part of a case. If you don't want to be, you don't have to be. And they can opt out. If they want to proceed, then they move forward. And the cool thing is, if they've been cheated out of, let's just take an example. If they've been cheated out of $100 because they were charged a fee that was illegal, but the business charged it anyway, If the case is won by the named plaintiff or plaintiffs, that decision is binding upon that whole class. And so what you can do is, in a very efficient case that takes some period of defined time, you can resolve the claims of thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands of people. And this is more than just theory. We settled a case a couple of years ago, Eric Veith and I, that it brought debt relief to over 100,000 people, and it returned cash to tens of thousands of people with a total value of about $25 million. So literally people went to bed owing $500 to a payday lender who had charged them rates of about 469% interest on their loans. They went to bed owing $500, the risk of being called, contacted, sued, garnished for that debt, and they woke up the next day and the debt was gone. And that happened for over 100,000 people. And so not every class action is great, but every class action we file it because we believe in it, and we believe it will achieve some good for the people we represent, both directly and through the class. And we've seen that that can happen. We've handled class actions where individuals were cheated out of their retirement. And some of those people received checks that were over $100,000. We saw people get back money they'd worked 30 years to earn. We've handled cases where people weren't paid overtime. And we've seen people receive checks for tens of thousands of dollars for pay they should have earned, but didn't, and then finally got. And so we've seen class actions make a difference in people's lives. We also believe that those class actions, because they hold businesses accountable for the whole wrong, not some individual piece of it, but for everybody they treated that way, we believe those can also change the way businesses act. And so we've gotten very good at doing that. It's something we work hard at. It's something we have a lot of knowledge about. It's something we go to CLEs about. It's something we train on. It's something we practice. And it's something that all three of us can do and are proud to do. And so I would encourage both consumers who think they've been cheated in a way that might be a class action to call, but I'd also invite attorneys. I want to talk specifically to referring attorneys. There are a lot of times that attorneys see a wrong, but it doesn't have enough heft to justify the individual case because there's not somebody who could pay them to pursue that claim, or because if they pursued that claim for 2 years, it would not financially, they are not able to take it. If you see these cases but you think it's happening to a lot of people, you should give us a call. We can work with you on that case because that's a wrong that's not going righted. It's a case that you're turning away, and it might be a case that can be effective. It might be a case that we can work on together. And so I'd invite referring attorneys to continue to send us cases that they think have that potential.